Hello and welcome to our weekly BTN volleyball show. It was another winless week for Indiana volleyball. The Hoosiers played hard against number 5 Nebraska in a sold-out Wilkinson Hall before succumbing to the Cornhuskers in 4 sets. The more consequential game, however, for IU was Saturday, where in a case of deja vu, Indiana blew another late lead, falling to Iowa in 5 close sets, including blowing 2 match points. So where do the Hoosiers go from here with 10 games remaining in the Big Ten? We have Griffin Epstein and John Bannec here to discuss. So starting with Nebraska, they dropped the match to the number 5 team in the country in 4 sets. They won the first set 25-22, and then Nebraska won the next 3 sets in a row by 12, then 9, then 11 points. Set 1 was the first time the Hoosiers had taken a set from Nebraska since 2012. It was a sold-out crowd in Wilkinson Hall Friday night game. The Hoosiers played well, especially against the top 5 team in the country, and especially in the first set. So, where do they go from here after this Nebraska game, and what did you see in that game? Griffin, I'll start with you.
Well, it was just a really cool atmosphere. I got to go for a couple sets into Wilkinson Hall and have a massive crowd there. It was really a cool experience, something that Steve Aird in his 2 years here wanted to build. The first sellout at Wilkinson, and Indiana was able to win the first set. They played really well. They were motivated for the game. They had the home crowd behind them, and they played really well. Was anyone expecting them to beat Nebraska? No. And Nebraska used its power over the course of the game, a plethora of kills, especially in the second and third sets, to go on runs, and Indiana just wasn't able to be competitive with them. But it was good fight and good grit from Indiana, and it showed that they believe in what they do and that they're going to continue to fight and be able to compete with a top 5 team in the country that could easily win the national championship.
And believe in what they do was a quote from Coach Steve Aird, and they're taking this Nebraska game as kind of a moral victory because they aren't expected to play with the top 5 team in the country that well. So for them, like I said, it's a moral victory, and Steve Aird was pretty happy with it. But then they go into the next day against Iowa, where they dropped the match on Saturday in 5 really close sets. The teams went back and forth each set. Iowa took set 5, 16-14. Each set, except for the fourth, was won by 5 points or less. That's how close it was. And this game was a pivotal game concerning their tournament hopes. It's the 3rd time the Hoosiers have lost in a really close match, and especially in the 5th set. They lost to Purdue by 2 in the 5th, Maryland by 3, and now Iowa, like I said, by 2. So this is just a matter of Hoosiers figuring out a way to get over the hump in these situations, right? Coach Steve Aird said post-game that it's on the staff to figure out a way to win these close games and get over the hump, which has become a constant theme. John, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, at this point moving forward for the Hoosiers, like you said, it's tough because they've had a lot of close games, like you said, against Maryland, against Purdue, and now against Iowa, especially this Iowa game. They were up 14-12, like you said, blew 2 match points and let the Hawkeyes score 4 uncontested points to win that match, so it was really tough. And like you said earlier, Steve Aird is he's happy about what they've done. They've improved off last season. They're finally starting to get in these games and play close against these teams. They're not getting blown out. But at the same time, they need to find a way to get over that hump. And Steve Aird in the press conference after the game said that he credits that kind of his own coaching staff and how they need to figure out ways for the Hoosiers to kind of figure out a way to make these close games now victories for the Hoosiers.
Right, and so after these games, over the weekend, who are some really big players that stood out to you guys? Griffin?
Well, Indiana was able to compete against Nebraska in big part to Kendall Bierman. She had a big weekend. She's been hurt all season, tore ACL last year. Hasn't really seemed like she's fully healthy. Bierman was finally healthy this weekend. She showed it both against Nebraska and against Iowa with some big kills and some big moments. And that's important for IU going forward, that they have one of their best offensive weapons back out on the court and that she can really get the offense going and get everyone involved for Indiana and has the experience of a senior.
All right, John, anybody stand up for you?
Yeah, for me, it really was Brianna Edwards. I think she did a great job. She's only a sophomore, which shows a lot of promise moving forward for the Hoosiers. She had 34 kills over the 2 matches, which was 15 against Nebraska, which was a very good showing, and 19 against Iowa. Also, just looking at the team as a whole and her statistics and where she lies, she is first on the team in kills and first on the team in points per set. So that's a very good stat, especially for such a young player that has such a long future ahead of her with the Hoosiers and hopefully can kind of create a culture for the Hoosiers and for the younger players that are going to be coming in years after.
Right, and the player I wanted to point out myself was Hayden Hubers, who in the game against Iowa, she had 10 kills, and she's a really important depth piece for this team, especially when maybe, say, Kendall Bierman or Brianna Edwards rotates out of the game for a little bit to get some rest. So Hubers being a big depth piece is going to be huge going forward for the rest of this Big Ten Conference season. So we have 10 games left in the season. We've played a ton of games, huge ones in the conference. Where do we assess this season so far and the program halfway through the second year of Coach Steve Aird?
Yeah, it's an interesting spot now in this program and in this season, halfway through Big Ten play. Obviously, a lot of the games haven't gone the way Indiana's gone, but talking to head coach Steve Aird at the press conference yesterday kind of put every program on a scale. So you start at, you were being blown out and at 0. You're being blown out in every single game. You're not competitive with anyone. Then you get to the 50-yard mark, which is where they're at now. Now they're being competitive with nearly everyone they play, especially opponents that are not ranked, likely have similar talent to Indiana, such as an Iowa and a Maryland that they played recently. Take them to 5 sets, but they don't know how to do the little things yet. They don't have the mentality yet to win those big points and close out matches. The next step is to learn how to win those points, learn how to win the close matches, and then you start to win it. That's when you get really past that hump that we're talking about, and then eventually to the level of a team like Nebraska, where you're blowing out most of the teams that you play. So Coach Aird is trying to get his team to that next place on the scale, and he's hoping that this season, through maybe just one game, just getting the monkey off the back, they can progress to that next spot on the scale and really build for next season and be more competitive in the Big Ten.
Right.
Yeah, and to Griffin's point, you can't really judge different coaching staffs on the players they have, especially in college. Steve Aird coming in, we can't really criticize Indiana right now because it is his second season. And in the college game, everyone knows that you have to be able to get your recruits for the liking of the style that you play and the type of volleyball that Steve Aird likes to play. And he's only in his second season, so he hasn't really gotten a chance to fully get the talent that he wants to fit his program. But, like I said earlier, we are seeing some of that young talent come out. Like I was talking about Brianna Edwards and how great of a job she's doing. Also, we have a freshman in Emily Fitzner who is also doing a great job for the Hoosiers. She is first on the team in assists per set. Second on the team in assists per set. So that's a great stat for her. She's just a freshman. She's got 3 years ahead of her. And it'll be interesting to see, as Steve Aird keeps coming along, where this program will go as the more talent that fits his program comes in and plays for the Hoosiers.
Right to that point, a big talking point at the beginning of the season was Coach Aird has 9 new players and 9 returning players. So he's kind of half and half with talent that he brought in himself and half with talent that was there when he came. So as the years move on, going into next year especially, this team will be led by the likes of Emily Fitzner, as you pointed out, and players like Haley Armstrong, who are both freshmen right now.
Yeah, it's a bright future, I think, no doubt, for Indiana. And just a couple more points on how close they've been this season. You look at non-ranked teams they played in Big Ten, which shows the depth of the Big Ten through 10 games. They have played 6 ranked teams, just 4 unranked teams. But in those 4 unranked games, while they're 1-3, those 3 losses, 2 of them have gone to 5 sets. The other a 4-set loss to Iowa, and they had leads in all 3 of those matches. So they really easily could have won at least 1 more, if not all 3. And they, instead of being 1-9 right now, they could be looking at 4-6. So you flip a couple coins, you make 1 more serve, you miss 1 more error, that you force an unforced error from the other team, and you could easily see Indiana looking at being around the halfway point in the standings in the Big Ten and even making the NCAA tournament this year. So they are really close right now.
I agree with Griffin, and that is true. They're very close. A couple games could have easily gone other ways. That is very true. But I think we have to play devil's advocate here, in a sense, in the fact that this has happened and it cannot continue going into next year. Yes, these games are close. Yes, there's a lot of promising signs that show that the Hoosiers will be able to turn this around starting next year. But when you look at it, they got blown out last year. They're losing close matches this year, but the records are still the same. And that needs to change, and hopefully next year we can see a change in that, but it needs to happen. It really does need to happen.
Right, and they keep getting close to victory, and they're 1-3 against non-top 25 teams in the conference, but if they can keep getting close, things might start going their way, and you never know once those sets get close. But now we need to look forward to Wednesday, where they go up to Purdue for a battle in West Lafayette. A big rivalry game. It's going to be on the Big Ten Network. The Boilers have won 14 in a row against the Hoosiers, dating back to 2012. Now, the Hoosiers have lost 3 in a row in 5 sets, including on October 9th. You should expect a close battle like when they played in Bloomington against these teams. And playing at Purdue and the Boilers, they're going to be fully healthy this time. It'll be tough for IU, especially coming off of the last 2 games for them. Hayden Huber said we just need to go for it. Kendall Bierman was quoted as saying we just have to believe we can win if it comes to the last few points in a 5th set. And then this will be a big game, obviously, especially for their tournament hopes and in the Big Ten in general. And then after the Purdue game, they go to Wisconsin, and the Hoosiers have to hope to compete with them. And then Penn State next week will conclude a stretch of 4 top 16 teams in 5 games. So tough schedule ahead. Going up to West Lafayette, that's the first thing they got to knock out of their schedule, get out of the way. They think they can win, and it'll be a close game. So that's going to do it for this week's edition of the BTN SU Volleyball Show. For Griffin Epstein and John Bannec, I'm Jackson Kinney. We'll see you next week.